Have you ever had that gnawing feeling? You know, you're incredibly busy all day, ticking things off, but then evening comes and you realize the really important stuff, the big goals, they haven't moved an inch. You're juggling work, personal life, that endless to-do list, and you just feel like overwhelmed. It's something a lot of us feel, I think. Especially if you work solo, wearing all the hats, no team to hand things off to. Well, today's deep dive, it's all about flipping that feeling around. We're going to look at a really solid, time-tested tool, the Eisenhower Matrix. And this is the key part. We'll really get into how to make it work for you, even if delegation, isn't really an option in the usual sense. We'll look at where it came from, why it works, and then kind of rebuild it for the solo operator.
Exactly. And the goal here isn't just, cramming more tasks in or even just doing more. It's about being strategic, prioritizing, putting your energy where it genuinely counts, which in turn really cuts down on stress and that constant feeling of putting out fires.
Yeah.
And the sources you shared, including that really insightful Reddit thread, they just nail this challenge for solo folks and offer some, well, surprisingly practical ways forward.
Okay, so let's unpack this. The Eisenhower Matrix, you might have heard of it maybe as the urgent important matrix, or the Eisenhower Bach. It sounds kind of official, right? And it should, because it comes from someone who really knew about making decisions under pressure. We're talking Dwight D. Eisenhower. I mean, his background is incredible. 34th U.S. President, 5-star general, Supreme Commander in WWII, NATO's first commander. Just imagine the sheer number of critical calls he had to make constantly, and his ability to stay productive, not just for a bit, but for decades. That's where this method comes from. It's all based on that famous quote of his. What is important is seldom urgent, and what is urgent is seldom important. Simple, but wow.
Yeah, it's fascinating how just a simple 2x2 grid can reveal so much. It forces you to confront that basic difference, right? Between what feels like it needs doing right now,
Right.
the urgent stuff, and what actually matters for the long haul, the important stuff. Importance, that connects to your mission, your values, the big picture. Urgency, that's often reactive. Deadlines, notifications, crises popping up. The real power here is just recognizing how easily the urgent stuff can just, crowd out the important stuff if we're not careful. It's a constant battle for focus.
Exactly. And once you kind of wrap your head around that difference, urgent versus important, mapping it onto the 4 quadrants just clicks. And here's where it gets really interesting, looking at how you actually sort your tasks. So quadrant 1, urgent and important. These are the do immediately things. Critical, need action now. Think like a major client deadline that's, tomorrow, or a critical system failure, maybe a genuine emergency like that leaky pipe example, or a sudden compliance thing you have to deal with. These are top priority. Neglect them, and there are real consequences. Okay, then we move to quadrant 2, important, but not urgent. These are the ones you need to schedule.
Right.
These are super critical for your long-term success, your growth, your strategy, but there's no immediate fire drill.
Right. This is the strategic planning, learning new skills, building real relationships, calling family, mentoring someone maybe. Exercise fits here too. Personal development, studying for that future exam.
Yeah, and our sources kept saying this. Successful people, they intentionally spend most of their time here. It gets called the quadrant of quality. For solo folks, this is where you build your future, basically.
And the absolute key is not waiting for these to become urgent Q1 problems. It's about scheduling time for them, like actively blocking out, say, 2 or 3 hours a week just for Q2 stuff. That prevents crises later on.
Okay, moving on. Quadrant 3, urgent, but not important. Traditionally, this is the delegate it box. These things demand your attention now. A ping, a call, an email alert, but they aren't actually vital to your main goals.
Yeah, think routine emails that aren't critical, some phone calls, admin tasks, maybe scheduling meetings for other people. These are sneaky time sinks, aren't they?
Totally. The sources call them the biggest drain on resources sometimes because they make you feel busy and productive.
But you're not actually moving your own projects forward.
And finally, quadrant 4, not urgent and not important. The eliminate it zone. These are just distractions, time wasters, stuff that adds zero value.
Like mindlessly scrolling social media, watching some random TV show you don't even care about. Busy work just to look busy.
Oh, I've been there. I once went down a rabbit hole researching like historical cheese-making techniques when I had a major report. It's definitely Q4.
Huh. We've all done it. The idea is to stop or really limit these. Though, intentional downtime, real relaxation, that's different. That's fine. It's about being conscious, not just letting time slip away.
Okay, but here's the big one. The question that kept popping up in the sources, especially that Reddit discussion you mentioned, if I'm working solo, what the heck do I do with quadrant the 3rd? The delegate stuff. It's a brilliant question, right? And super common for anyone who's their own boss, their own team.
Precisely. It's a major sticking point. The traditional matrix kind of glosses over for freelancers, solo entrepreneurs, people like that. How do you adapt this great tool when delegation isn't really on the table and Q3 feels like, yeah, quicksand? But look, there's some really practical ways to handle it. First off, you can just reframe Q3. Think of it as delegate avoid, or maybe even more directly, say no. For someone working alone, sometimes the best strategy is learning to firmly, politely decline tasks that are urgent for someone else, but just not important for your goals.
Ah, okay. So it shifts the focus from finding someone else to do it to you making a conscious choice not to do it yourself.
Exactly. It's about protecting your time for Q1 and Q2, building that boundary.
Saying no sounds great, but sometimes you do have these small, annoying, urgent tasks you can't just ditch. You mentioned automation, but isn't setting up automation like another big Q2 task in itself? How do you start small with that if you're already swamped?
That's a really fair point.
Yeah.
You don't want automation set up to become another source of overwhelm. The key is definitely starting small, super small even. Don't try to automate everything at once. Pick one repetitive Q3 thing you do often, like maybe manually scheduling social media posts. Look at a basic scheduling tool or appointment booking. A simple tool like Schedule Once can handle that.
Okay, so find the low-hanging fruit.
Exactly. Even just setting up better email filters can make a huge difference. Zapier is powerful, sure, but often the apps you already use have simple automations built in. Look for those little repetitive things tech can take off your plate. It's like delegating to the machine. Another tactic is batching. Group similar Q3 tasks together.
Like all the non-urgent emails or the admin stuff.
Yeah. And tackle them all in one specific short time block, say 30 minutes every afternoon. That contains them, stops them from interrupting your deep work all day long, keeps your focus on Q1 and Q2. And that leads nicely into the idea of elimination, which isn't just for Q4, right? James Clear talks about elimination before optimization. There's that great quote from Kevlin Henney, there is no code faster than no code.
I like that.
For solo folks, if you can't delegate something and it's not important for your goals, maybe the best thing is just to delete it. Get rid of it entirely. Be ruthless, not just with obvious time wasters, but even some of those Q3 requests that clamor for attention but don't actually serve you.
Oh, and for people who really like these matrix models, the sources mentioned another one too, the action priority matrix. Might be worth looking into if this kind of thinking clicks for you. Different angle, effort versus impact. Wow, okay. So adapting the matrix for solo work is definitely doable. But let's go a bit deeper. How do these underlying principles kind of supercharge the matrix, especially when you are on your own? Turn it from just a tool into like a whole way of working. The sources had some great stuff on this.
Yeah, one of the biggest ones is understanding this thing called the urgency trap.
Yeah.
It's actually a cognitive bias, the mere urgency effect. Basically, our brains are wired to prioritize urgent tasks over important ones, even if the important ones have way bigger long-term payoffs.
Ooh, that sounds familiar. Like grabbing the squeaky wheel first.
Exactly. And for solo workers, it's extra tough. You feel responsible for everything. Every ping feels like it needs your immediate attention. It leads to that constant firefighting mode, right? Your big goals get pushed aside, stress goes up, you get decision fatigue, just trying to figure out what to do next. But here's the empowering part. Knowing it's a bias means you can fight it. Research shows that just consciously pausing, taking a breath, and thinking about the long-term outcomes of your choices helps.
So asking, what happens if I do this now versus later? What's the real impact?
Precisely. And what am I not doing if I do this urgent thing? Thinking about the opportunity cost. That pause helps you steer back towards quadrant 2.
That makes a lot of sense. And speaking of quadrant 2, you can't prioritize effectively if you don't know what's truly important, right? Like the sources said, it's hard to eliminate time wasters if you aren't sure what you're actually working towards. Defining that Q2 stuff is crucial.
Absolutely crucial. You need that North Star. James Clear offers 2 really powerful questions to help find it. First, what am I working toward? And second, what are the core values that drive my life?
Simple questions, but probably not easy answers for everyone.
No, they take some thought. But answering them gives you the lens you need to look at any task and say, okay, where does this fit? Is it truly important to me? That clarity makes sorting into quadrants easier, filling Q2 meaningful, and saying no to Q3 stuff much more confident.
Okay, so we know it's important. We've scheduled our Q2 time. But then comes the hard part for many of us, actually starting those big, important, non-urgent things. That brings us to, what was it, Newton's first law of productivity.
Yeah.